Hey everyone, happy Wednesday. Welcome to another great stream. And if you're local, we're getting a little bit of relief. It's dropped 20 degrees in 2 days. 2 days ago, it was like 105 here in Southern California. And now today, I think it was like 84. So there's a lot of talk about fires going on around. I hope everybody is safe if you're local to my area. For those of you that are watching from not California, there's a lot of fires happening right now. So please keep those that are affected in their thoughts. I actually sold a cabin up in the Mount Baldy area, which is our local mountains here. And I reached out to that client and I was just like, hey, I'm thinking about your house and you, and I hope everything's okay. And he texted me back, and unfortunately they lost their cabin to the fire. So some pretty serious situations out there. Again, we just gotta try to help out where we can and keep those in mind that might be facing a very difficult stretch right now. So today we have a fun topic today. I'm going to try to not get too riled up over today's topic. We're talking about some of the commission changes that have happened recently in the world of real estate. Now, these commission changes, which you've probably heard about. I mean, if you're watching this stream, you're probably interested in real estate a little bit. So you've probably heard about them. There's a lot of confusion out there. There's a lot of misinformation, and there's a lot of things that just people are kind of confused about. So we have a couple articles that we have lined up, and we're going to take a look at them, and we're going to briefly kind of just recap what these new rules are, these new settlements are regarding commissions. We're going to talk about how we're starting to see it affect the marketplace and what effect they're having. And the third article I have it's very frustrating, but it's also very interesting, at least to me. And it's about how one of the plaintiffs of the lawsuit that started this whole thing is now looking to get rich and profit, not from the lawsuit itself, but from the rule change. So kind of interesting the way that worked out. As you guys know, at any time, if you have any questions, put them into the comments below, pop them into the chat, and I'm happy to do my best to answer them. And the questions don't just have to be related to the stream. If you have any real estate, housing, any types of questions, are you buying a house right now and you have a question, fire away. I'd love to try to help you out. And don't forget, drop a like on the stream. If you're watching, do it right now while I have your attention. Hit the like button. Subscribe if you've not subscribed to the channel. Thanks for being here. So let's get into our very first article. So this one comes from the Washington Post. This one, for some reason, it does have a date. Yeah, September 10th. So just yesterday, this article came out. It's from the Washington Post. How buyers, sellers, and agents are navigating the real estate shakeup. New rules on agent commissions formally kicked in last month, but have already been having an effect on the ground. And a couple things right off the bat. These changes went into effect with a lawsuit that was decided, I believe it was back in March or April when the lawsuit was decided. Around June, we got wind that there were going to be official changes that were taking place. Some, depending on where you are, again, this is not a law. This is just a settlement and new regulations that have come down from the National Association of Realtors. So depending on where you're at, some of these rules have actually been in effect longer than a month. Some places have been doing it since the end of June. A lot of places didn't really start formalizing things until early to mid-August. The deadline was August 17th. So from the formal deadline of August 17th, it's been almost a month. So that's what this article is kind of talking about, is what's going on in that time frame. As always, I'm going to go through this article. I'm going to read it, kind of give you my reaction to it. I'm going to give you my 2 cents. I want to know your opinion, though. So if you have an opinion on this as I go through the article, please let me know. I'd love to hear what you think. Even if you disagree with me, if you think my opinion's dumb, you can go ahead and tell me why. I promise I won't get mad. So let's dive right in. The real estate industry got its biggest jolt in years last month when new rules kicked in for the 1.5 million members of the National Association of Realtors, giving consumers more flexibility to set agent commission fees under a historic $418 million settlement. So again, this just applies to those real estate agents that are members of the National Association of Realtors. Now, the large majority of real estate agents, and probably the large majority of real estate agents that you're ever going to come into contact with on the residential side, are probably going to be members of the National Association of Realtors. But you don't have to be. You're not required to be. There's a few things. It's one of these deals where it's like, well, you're not required to be, but if you're not a member of NAR, National Association of Realtors, then you don't get this, and this. And you're like, well, I need those things, so I guess I kind of have to be a member. So again, this only affects those agents that prescribe to the National Association of Realtors and certain MLSs that are run by realtor boards that are with National Association of Realtors. So it is possible that you could see a variation in these rules depending on where you are and if your agent is a NAR member or not. There's a really high likelihood that they are. $418 million settlement, not chump change. I mean, that's a big dollar amount. We're approaching $500 million in settlement. And you think, well, who got that? Well, it was a class action lawsuit. And some of the sellers that were in lawsuit did get paid out, but it affected a lot of sellers. I think someone did a math in one of the real estate groups that I'm in on Facebook, and I think the average settlement for your home seller in this lawsuit, out of the $418 million, I think each home seller got between 20 and 30 bucks. So they did not make a lot of money, but I can guarantee you who did make a lot of money, and that was the lawyers that litigated this. They made millions, tens of millions of dollars litigating this class action lawsuit. Now, these changes are affecting the real estate market on the ground, as Michael Rodriguez recently found out. When the first-time home buyer started a search in Northern Virginia earlier this year, the settlement hadn't been announced, and he didn't even know how agents got paid, which is not it's not unique. A lot of consumers, especially buyers, are like, I don't know how this works. I barely know how buying a house works, let alone how an agent's going to be paid. That's not something I've thought of. So, it's not uncommon. Hey, David, hope you're doing well, buddy. Thanks for joining the stream. Good to see you. So, this article doesn't recap what those changes are really quickly. I'm going to break them down. And this is going to just be like the Supreme Reader's Digest version. Basically, 2 new rules are enacted. The very first rule is that in order for buyers to tour a home, whether that's in person or virtually with an agent, they now have to sign a buyer representation agreement or a buyer broker contract or exclusive buyer representation. There's all sorts of names for it, but essentially there needs to be documentation, i.e. a contract between that prospective home buyer and the agent. And this is new. A month ago, before this rule went into effect, you didn't have to have an agreement. If you saw a home that you liked, it had a for sale sign, you could call up an agent, could be your agent, could be the listing agent, could be a random agent, and say, hey, my name's John. I want to go see this house. Will you show it to me? And that agent's like, yeah, sure. I'll be right down. Boom, you go look at it. And that's the end of it. Not the case anymore. You have to have an agreement in writing that outlines what the duties of the agent are, what the expectations of the client are, and it must include how the agent will be compensated if that client purchases the property. The second thing with that is that no longer are commissions advertised in the MLS. And you think, okay, well, big deal. What does that mean? Well, previously, sellers offered a commission. That commission was put in the MLS so that buyers agents would know what their compensation would be. And this is where the kind of the misnomer, the falsehood came in that, sellers were paying the buyer's agents their fee, and now they don't have to do that. And that's not entirely accurate. And I'll break that down as I get further on into these articles. So that's kind of just the overview, the synopsis. If you have more questions, just put them into the comment for chat. My agent explained that the industry was in the middle of a lawsuit, but that I wouldn't be covered by the old rules, even if things changed by the time I bought a house. He explained, it turns out the settlement, announced in March, upended many of the old ways of doing business, as Rodriguez discovered, which it did do. Sellers can no longer advertise and offer to compensate the buyer's agent on databases known as multiple listing services, or an MLS, on grounds that buyer's agents might be more likely to bring their clients to properties where owners offered the most compensation. They can discuss fees with the buyer and the buyer's agent offline, though. So this is the first thing that's kind of like interesting. I, as an agent, never once in my life did I have a client that said, Joe, I'm looking for a 3-bed, 2-bath, 1,800 square feet in the city of Claremont. My budget's $700,000, $900,000. Okay, great. We start looking at properties in the MLS. Never did I not send that client a listing because a commission was, quote unquote low. I just sent it to them, and if they liked it, we'd go look at it. And if they didn't like it, we didn't look at it. Really wasn't that big of a deal. But the principle still is true, right? Like if you've got two houses out there, they both fit the needs of your buyer, and one is offering a 2% commission and the other is offering a 3% commission. Well, some agents out there would say, well, to heck with 2%, I'm going to show them the 3%. Where this becomes a problem, other than the fact that that's steering and it's against the rules, it's an ethical violation. But where this becomes a problem in actually happening is the fact that now a consumer can go on Zillow, Redfin, Realtor.com, Homes.com, any one of these platforms, and see exactly what properties are available. And not only that, but for a very long time, Redfin, prior to this ruling, because they can't do this now, Redfin was showing what the buyer's agent commission was directly to the consumer, which is pretty transparent if you ask me. And if you're an agent and there were two homes that fit your buyer's criteria, you better believe that buyer is also looking on Redfin and Zillow and is seeing both of those homes. And they're probably going to wonder, hey, Mr. Buyer Agent, why did you only specifically tell me about house A when house B also fits my criteria? What's that about? So it was a little bit easier for agents to get caught doing that because consumers were a little bit more informed. But no longer can buyer agent commissions be posted in the MLS. You can still advertise a buyer agent commission. A seller can still offer a buyer agent commission. It just can't be publicized in the MLS. That's one of the bigger changes with this ruling. The settlement also required that buyers using an agent first sign an agreement that spells out how much the agent will be paid, either a percentage of the sale price or a fee for services, with the buyer on the hook for the payment unless they negotiate a contribution from the seller. Both changes mark a sharp break from traditional agreements in which the seller pays the commission for both agents. While fees have always been negotiable, they usually total between 5 and 6% of the sale price. And this is, I've seen commissions range so much. I've seen commissions range anywhere from 3% to 7%. The whole but they're negotiable, but they're 5 to 6. They're 5 to 6. I mean, maybe that's what the average is. And when you average between 3% and 7%, guess what's in the middle? 5%. Isn't that crazy that 5 would be the typical average in a given window if it's 3 and 7? So that by no means meant that the commission that anybody was expected to pay was between 5 and 6%. That's just where the average fell to. Just like with the average price of home in the United States is about $450,000. Doesn't mean that all homes in the United States are priced that much. Some are priced at $40,000. Some are priced at $40 million. Even before the formal start of the new rules on August 17th, buyers and sellers were adjusting to the settlement, with agent commissions falling, partly a result of increased bargaining by buyers. The average commission per agent was 2.55% in July, down from 2.62% in January, according to a Redfin report. These two sentences are all they're kind of BS here. There's a couple of reasons for that. There could have definitely been higher commission rates in January. January is a slower time of year for real estate. It's one of the slowest times of year for real estate sales. And it's quite possible that sellers could have upped the buyer agent commission offer to make that home more enticing to try to get them to sell it to one of their buyers. And in July, one of the busiest times, that could definitely result in sellers saying, hey, it's July. It's the busy time for buyers and sellers. I can get away with offering a lower commission. So this doesn't have to do with, I think this is more of a seasonal thing and a seasonality thing, as opposed to, commissions as a trend were on the way down. I don't think that's necessarily true. Here are some stories of how ordinary people have adjusted to the new normal in real estate. Buyers adjust to more flexibility. Interesting way to put it. Let's see what they say. Rodriguez, who wound up buying a home in Falls Church, Virginia in July, signed a buyer's agent agreement with Temi Akoji, an agent with Fulcrum Residential in DC. when he began looking in January. At the time, they didn't negotiate a commission, he explains. At the time in January, that wasn't needed. In fact, in January, they didn't even have to have a signed buyer's agent agreement. That wasn't a rule. Now, a lot of brokerages, some boards of realtors, and some states did suggest or even require that agents and buyers enter into a buyer agency agreement, but it wasn't a NAR rule, it wasn't a law, nothing like that. Especially at that time, a commission didn't need to be included in that paperwork. Basically, the old buyer agent agreement was simply, I'm, client, I work with you, you work with me. I'm going to find you a house. I'm going to, you're going to exclusively work with me. And for that, I'm going to give you the best service and skills possible that I can give you to help you buy a home. Temi explained that I could negotiate her fee, but I didn't think much about it until we were ready to close on the house. Because at the time, before the rules enactment, sellers paid the buyer's agent fee, Rodriguez said, which sellers, this is always kind of a chicken and the egg. The money for the buyer's agent did come out of the seller's proceeds. So a lot of people go, oh, the seller paid for it. But where is the seller getting their money from? The seller's getting their money from the buyer and the ability of that buyer to obtain a mortgage. And without that buyer and their ability to obtain a mortgage, the seller has no proceeds. Therefore, the seller wouldn't pay any commission. So yes, the money is coming out of the seller's proceeds, but without the buyer's loan and the buyer's money and the buyer's offer, there's no proceeds to begin with. So it's a little bit of a chicken and the egg scenario on that one. But when Rodriguez found out the seller had negotiated with Koji that she would only $10,000, not the $12,000 that would have been the case before, he wanted to make sure she was fairly compensated. He topped off her commission with an extra $2,000 when the deal closed. What an amazing client. Every once in a while on a deal to make the deal work and to basically, make sure that the buyer is satisfied and gets what they need. Every once in a while, agents do negotiate their commission. The most often way that this happened was when, home inspection comes up and there's $10,000 worth of needed repairs. And the buyer says, well, I want 10 grand. And the seller says, well, I'm only going to give you 5. That's it. Take it or leave it. We have a $5,000 gap. Let's say it's a $700,000 house. And this whole transaction is now paused over $5,000. Typically, what will happen is the agents will get together and say, hey, why don't you kick in some money? I'll kick in some money. Buyer can have a little bit more in concession. The seller still makes the same amount. Clients are satisfied. We as the agents look like rock stars, makes us look better, makes us look like we really did solve for our client because we did. We're basically giving up part of our paycheck so that we can facilitate the deal, and it goes on that way. So it's not uncommon for that, but it is uncommon for the buyer to say, hey, agent, I heard you gave up some commission. I want to make it up to you. That's pretty rare. So this is a good client. She did a great job, and I didn't think it was fair for her to be shortchanged, Rodriguez said. She worked hard all year to help me buy a house, so she should get paid for her services. What a refreshing take, people getting paid for their services. Still, Rodriguez said he sees value in the new rules and believes that new transparency about agent compensation helps buyers and sellers understand they need to pay for their agent's work. I have a little bit of an issue with the transparency thing. In my opinion, commissions have always been transparent, especially when they got publicized in not only the MLS, but also in public-facing websites like Redfin. Like I said, at any time, a buyer could look at a house, a new listing came up, click on it, look at the pictures, look at the look at the bedroom count, look at the bathroom count, look at square footage, read the description, and then right below, you could see how much the compensation was offered to the buyer's agent. I mean, what's more transparent than that? Now that's gone. Now it's a guessing game of is the seller going to offer anything? Or if they are going to offer something, how much are they going to offer? As a buyer, am I on the hook for paying my agent for this house? Well, maybe I don't have to pay him for this house because the seller's willing to offer, but maybe I have to pay him for that house because the seller isn't willing to offer it. Doesn't seem very transparent to me. But some experts have a more skeptical take, noting that the new rules could disadvantage cash-strapped buyers, such as first-time buyers, those with lower incomes, or people of color without family, wealth, or experience buying homes, because they will no longer have the strong possibility that their seller will pay the commission for both agents. Instead, they are on the hook for either having enough cash on the side to pay their agent or working with the seller to help cover the costs. And this is a great point. Low-income buyers, minority buyers, first-time buyers, they are potentially going to have a steeper hill to climb to get into home ownership, because now either they have to, one of two things is going to happen. Number one, actually one of three things could happen. Number one, they get an agent, and that agent has to negotiate with the seller to pay that buyer agent fee. And the seller could just say, no, I'm not going to do it. Then what happens? Okay, we go to scenario number two. These cash strapped buyers, they can barely afford a down payment as it is. They can barely afford closing costs. They can barely afford insurance. They can barely afford any of these things. Now have to have cash on top of all of those things to pay for their agent. That's really difficult. Or the third option is they don't have a lot of money to pay for an agent. So they go out and they find an agent that's willing to work with their budget. And that means that they're working with an agent that is now cut their rate possibly drastically. And typically you do get what you pay for. So now these first-time buyers, these minority buyers, these low-income buyers that barely have put enough money together to even buy a home, now potentially are being exposed to representation that is of a lower quality during the biggest financial decision and purchase of their life. If I am making a huge decision like buying a house, probably the biggest financial decision you can make, I want my agent to be really, really good. And before, I could go out and get the best agent, the best buyer's agent I could find, and know, hey, they're going to be compensated through the transaction with an agreement with the listing agent and listing brokerage. Now, that's no longer the case. So I certainly am in the opinion and thought process of this article that, yeah, it could severely hinder first-time buyers, minority buyers, and low-income buyers, because this certainly raises the bar for them to get into a home, because it's going to potentially could increase the amount of cash needed to close the deal. One recent working paper by economists at Stanford, Columbia, and Northwestern universities, for example, concluded that even if the NAR settlement results in a significant decrease in agent fees, it is unlikely to substantially improve housing affordability for prospective buyers who are financially constrained, which isn't a huge surprise to me. A seller comes to terms with supply and demand. This is a great little story. For some sellers, the practice of paying someone who represents their buyer always has been problematic. Bruce Satrum of Alexandria, Minnesota is one of them. I don't understand this. First off, when you sell a house, in the old rules, you weren't paying the buyer's agent, you were paying the listing agent. Then that listing agent chose to offer an amount out to the buyer. That amount typically was agreed on between the listing agent and the seller. After all, if you promise to give 5% to your listing agent and that listing agent only turns around and offers out 1% to the buyer's agent, that could deter buyers and their agents from selling your house or showing your house. But what a lot of sellers don't realize, and what a lot of people don't realize, is that during a real estate transaction, it's a group effort. Everybody's working towards the same goal. Everybody wants that house to sell. The sellers want to sell to the buyer. The buyers want to buy it from the seller. Obviously, both agents and both brokerages want it to sell. Escrow wants it to sell. Title wants it to sell. Everybody wants it to sell. And so it's a group effort. It's teamwork. And sellers having this idea that I'm paying the adversary, I'm paying a buyer's agent to work against me. That's, in my opinion, the incorrect mindset to have. The better mindset to have is I am compensating a skilled agent to bring me a buyer, and then hold that buyer's hand through this transaction, help them understand everything, help them understand disclosures, help them understand a home inspection, help them understand how title works, help them understand how the actual closing process works, do all these things so that I, as a seller, can have a smooth transaction with little headache as possible and get my home sold quickly. And also, by the way, by offering a good agent to the buyers, by offering a good commission to the buyer's agent, you're going to have more buyers agents interested, more buyers interested in the property. You're probably going to get multiple bids, multiple offers, and the price of your property could go up, and it could go up more than what you're offering to pay out, which means you actually net more money. But this is something that a lot of people don't think about. As a seller, I hire someone to sell my house, Satram said. As the buyer, you hire an agent to negotiate for you and help you buy. So you should pay your agent for their services. That seems simple and clear to me. And I got to say, his thought process here, although very rudimentary and basic, not inherently incorrect, not blasphemous by any stretch of the imagination. But again, he's very simplifying this a lot. And it does seem simple, but this is a very, very basic breakdown of this. And this is where his tune changes a little bit. Satram found himself navigating the new rules when he recently put his Minnesota vacation home on the market. He insisted he wouldn't pay a buyer's agent, even though his agent recommended that he negotiate to pay part of their compensation to get better offers. So this guy goes, no, I'm not paying. I know my rights. I know the rules. I'm not paying, which, by the way, this is nothing new. Okay. Remember how back when I said, okay, when you go to list your house, you sign an agreement with a listing agent. And at the time, that's when you agree upon the commission. Then the listing agent would turn around and offer a portion of that out. So for instance, let's say you say, okay, listing agent, I'm going to offer 5% commission, and I want to give 2.5% to you to list it and sell it. And I want to give 2.5% to the buyer. Fair, 50-50 split. Great, wonderful. Well, that was negotiable, always negotiable. Commissions have always been negotiable. I just took 5% as an example. That seller could have said, hey, listing agent, I'm going to give you 2.5% to list and sell my house. And I don't want to pay a buyer's agent. And I understand that I have to offer a compensation in the MLS. That is a requirement. You have to offer something as compensation, monetary value, but never said how much. And I've seen this before. I've seen properties in the MLS, according to the old rules, where they only offered $1 to the buyer's agent. Okay, that's effectively zero. That's effectively nothing, right? $1 for compensation. Would you work for 20, 30, 40, 50 hours at work for $1? Not $1 an hour, $1? No, you probably wouldn't. You're like, screw that. That might as well be zero. And it might as well be. So this is nothing new. Sellers have always been able to do this, but why didn't they? Well, it's because when you offered $1 out, nobody's going to buy the home. Buyer's agents are going to tell their client, hey, I'm only getting paid $1. You have to compensate me. And buyers are going, I don't have the money to compensate you. Check that home off the list. You can cross it off because we're not going to see it. So this idea that, now I don't have to pay an agent commission, that's wrong in the first place. I can negotiate more on the commission. That's wrong. So again, just things that maybe didn't come to light are now coming to light. So let's see what happens in this case to this seller, the seller who is adamant about not offering buyer agent commission. I know the ending. The house wound up getting 3 offers the first weekend it was on the market. That's great news. But 2 got bogged down over financing and other contingencies. Eager to sell, Satram then decided to accept the 3rd offer despite the buyer's request that he pay that agent's fee. Relaxing his long-standing preference, Satram negotiated to pay half of the buyer's agent's fee instead of the full amount. Now, we don't know what half of what is, that agent, those buyers could have said, well, we want a 4% commission. And Satram might have said, okay, well, I'll pay half of it. I'll pay 2%. Well, now he's paying around the industry standard for a buyer's agent commission. In essence, nothing changed. Satram anticipates negotiating all agent fees in the future. Okay, why in the future? You can negotiate them right now. You can negotiate them in the past. They've always been negotiable. And in California, when you are talking about commissions, like in big, bold writing, like right on the very first page, when you list a home, it says all real estate commissions are negotiable. You can negotiate. So this is absolutely nothing new. And the fact that this guy, and if he owns a vacation home, they don't say his age, but he's probably a boomer. The fact that he thinks, oh, well, now, we can negotiate. Well, you could always do that before. There was no rule that said you couldn't. It's all supply and demand and how much you want to buy or sell, he said. Yes, he's exactly right. It's like he's contradicting himself. It is all about supply and demand. And guess what? If your home demands no buyers because you didn't offer compensation, then it's not going to work out great for you. An agent sees steady demand from buyers. Agents might not be thrilled with the new rules, but they still have to get comfortable with them, said Philip Sexton, co-owner of Sibach team with eXp Realty in Scottsdale, Arizona. I don't think that's actually true either. I mean, maybe agents aren't thrilled. I know I don't have a problem with the new agreement because before my commission was subject to the listing agent and the seller and what they offered. Now I can negotiate my own commission. So before, if I showed a house or if my buyers like the house, it comes up in the MLS, we look at it and let's say they're offering 2% commission. I go, okay, well, fine, whatever, that's fine. If my clients like it, we're going to do everything we can to get the house. But if I have now a buyer agent agreement that says, guess what? My rate's 2.5%. That's my rate. And if you want to work with me, that's how much I charge because I've sold over $80 million worth of real estate. I have specialized training. I have a designation from the National Association of Realtors called the Accredited Buyers Representative Program. So I am even more equipped. I have more education and skills to work specifically with buyers and first-time home buyers than other agents. I have wonderful track record with tons of clients that you can call, email, or talk to, and they'll give you great testimonials. My value is 2.5% of the sales price. And they say, okay, we get it. After all, everyone should be paid for their service. That's what even this sellers say in the article, right? Well, now if I come across a house that only is offering 2%, or the seller says, I'll give you 1.5%, doesn't matter. I have an agreement for 2.5%. So I effectively am going to make more than I would have without the agreement. So this idea that these new rules put the kibosh on buyer's agents, I think it actually could be a little bit of the opposite of that. These changes include new forms that agents need to understand and explain to their clients, forms that some consumer groups have criticized as too complicated for average people to understand. Yes, and that's the problem. Whenever there's a problem in today's society, the answer is paperwork. And I live in California. I'm in Claremont, California, which is about 35 miles east of LA. As we start off the stream, neighborhood's heavily affected by the few forest fires that we have in our local foothills. Sometimes the answer of government is, oh, more paperwork. And a lot of times they think they're helping consumers by, oh, look, there's a form for that. There's paperwork for that. There's documentation for that. And what they don't understand is consumers don't have the bandwidth or the expertise to actually absorb and understand what that paperwork's saying. And so I don't disagree. These forms are constructed by attorneys because attorneys sued for these changes to be made. So you have a bunch of attorneys sitting in a room arguing about how to correct these problems, and they come up with really, really complicated forms. And it would really be nice if there was a dedicated professional to explain these forms to these home buyers so that they know what's going on. Oh, wait, that exists. It's called a real estate agent. It's weird how that works. Some states require a real estate attorney to be part of the transaction, while others, such as Arizona and California, do not. But in general, there's a new focus on legal documents being friendly and understandable for consumers, Sexton said, which I don't disagree with. I think they should be. I think the average person, the person who has never bought a home before, should easily be able to pick up a document and go, oh, okay, I know what they're getting at. I maybe not understand the nitty gritty and the fine details, but I understand what they're saying to me. I agree. That's how it should be. While many jurisdictions had required written buyer's agent agreements for years, Arizona is using them for the first time since the new rules went into effect in the state ahead of the deadline on August 1st. In the past, we had to work hard to prove our value to get buyers' business because they weren't locked in with an agreement to work with any agent, Sexton said. We want buyers to feel loyal, which is true. One of the biggest burns in the industry is you spend 2, 3, 4, 5 months working with a buyer, sending them properties, setting up showings, going to showings, potentially writing offers, explaining why this property is potentially a good fit, explaining why it's a bad fit, doing market analyses to determine if the home that they're interested in is priced appropriately. Can they make a lower offer? Is there going to be a bidding war? And should they be prepared to make a higher offer? Is it in a flood zone, fault zone? Is there potential for wildfire zones there? There's a lot of things that go into it. And one of the worst burns in the industry is to do all of that and then find out after 4, 5, 6, 7 months that they used a different agent to buy a home. And all of that work has been in vain and you go uncompensated. It's one of the worst things in the world as a real estate agent that represents buyers. So we do want them to feel loyal, and having this representation agreement solves that problem, which is one of the reasons I think that this settlement is not all necessarily bad. It's got its good parts and it has its bad parts. Sellers were always given a listing presentation and then signed a written agreement. Under the new rules, he explains, it's now the same for buyers, who also must be given a consultation by an agent and sign paperwork before working with them. Working with them, again, means showings, right? So you can have a discussion with an agent. You don't need to sign anything. You can walk into an open house and take a look at the house. You don't need to sign anything. But when it comes to, hey, I want to write an offer, how do I do that? That's when, at that point, you got to have an agreement with an agent. Sexton also sees buyers becoming more educated about home buying. For example, he expects open houses will become more popular among buyers who want to casually look at properties but aren't ready to sign an agreement that commits them to work and pay an agent, which I think has always been true. I think open houses have always been popular because it allows for a very relaxed environment to go look at a property. Not only that, but open houses typically are on Saturdays and Sundays when people have the time and availability to potentially go check out a house that they might be interested in. That's because the new rules require an agreement to be signed before an agent privately shows homes to potential buyers. We're having lengthier buyer consultation meetings before we work with buyers, Sexton said. Some buyers expect to pay their agents. Some expect that sellers will negotiate and pay their agents. We're finding sellers are mixed about it too. Agents are adapting in different ways, he said. Some are shifting their business to only work with sellers, Sexton said. Others are working harder to demonstrate their value to buyers and provide a menu of services the way listing agents do. Meanwhile, the required changes in the MLS commission listings mean that agents must be more transparent about their compensation and prove their value to buyers more aggressively. He said his team focuses on finding and sharing private listings with buyers and working on an internal list of potential sellers to generate more homes to put on the market, which remains legal. This is not transparent. This was one of the problems we had previously about, I'm just going to try to find a seller and find a buyer and hook those two up. That keeps other potential buyers from knowing about a property. Most properties should be brought to market and be exposed to all buyers. It's the most fair thing. It's fair for sellers, it's fair for buyers, and it's fair for the neighborhood and community because it can affect property values. And again, it's legal to do that. There's no rule that says you can't, but this kind of is a part of the thing where it lacks some of the transparency. Remember, pocket listings were a big thing, and people are like, "Oh, pocket listings are unfair because homes just transfer and they don't even hit the open market, and buyers don't even have a chance, and it's shady. Agents are just trying to get a seller, find a buyer, and then they get to keep the whole commission if they're in a state that allows dual representation, which is when an agent represents both buyer and seller." So interesting that, again, we're in some ways going backwards. The lack of homes for sale has been a challenge for buyers for many years. So finding properties before they're on the open market is one way buyers as agents can support buyers. Any good seller, any smart seller, any good listing agent, any seller that's trying to get the best terms and price for the property should go to the open market. That's why auctions are so popular for collectibles, valuables, antiques, things like that, because it gives everybody a chance that is interested in purchasing the ability to throw out an offer. And that's how properties sell for their actual worth, when buyers have the ability to all sit down and go, okay, well, this is how much I'm willing to do. This is how much I'm willing to do. Okay, well, I guess I'll raise my price even more. Going on in the open market is always the best way to sell a property or really any other commodity or asset. Despite all the changes, Buyers' demand for agent services remains steady, he said. Well, of course they do. Most buyers have heard of the changes, but they still want an agent to hold their hand and help them, Sexton said. They know we don't work for free, and we're educating them on how the process works. So kind of a good overview with some real world examples of sellers, buyers, agents, and how they're kind of dealing with what's going on and what their experiences have been in the marketplace. Got a comment from Maddie B. Maddie, question to both Joe and David. Oh, bringing David in. David, I'm just going to have you on the live stream next week. The viewership is calling for you. Question for to both Joe and David. If a potential buyer asks you for references, do you provide contact info of former clients who have agreed to do so, or only provide semi-anonymous testimonials? This is a really, really good question. The first thing I would do is I would provide a link to my Google business page and to my Zillow profile and to my realtor.com profile. That way they can see past clients that I've worked with that have actually left me reviews. And as you probably know, as an agent, I can ask for reviews to be submitted, but I also don't have to ask. So if I had a bad experience, or if a buyer or seller had a bad experience with me, they could go on and give me 1 star, 2 stars, 3 stars. I can't get rid of it. I can't change it. I can't modify it. So that's the first thing I would do. The other thing I would do is I do have a list of clients that have worked with me, typically recently, and I provide email and their names. And the prospective client is more than welcome to reach out to them. So that's how I would provide that. Every agent's gonna, could potentially do it a different way. If David's still hanging out in the stream, I'd love to know the way that he does it. But that's the best thing that I think that's the best practice. And I think buyers should ask for references. I think they should try to contact past clients of the agents. I mean, after all, it's an interview both ways, right? As a buyer, you're interviewing that agent, and as the agent, you're interviewing the buyer, right? You don't want to waste your time as an agent, and the buyer certainly doesn't want to waste their time with an agent that's not good. So that's the best way to do it. If you want to get really, really technical, what I would do is I would go onto Zillow and I would try to find how many properties the agent has sold recently, like in the last 2 years, year and a half, 2 years, and see when those dates are, and then compare those dates with the reviews to make sure that, like, hey, the homes that he sold recently, there's testimonials recently to support those homes being sold. So if this agent has sold 10 homes in the last year and they have 10 reviews in the last year, and all 10 of those reviews are 5 stars, well, then that they're not, trying to hide bad reviews, or they're only referring clients they know had a good experience. So hopefully that makes sense. If you have any other questions, pop them in the chat. Thanks for being here, Maddie. Appreciate you. So let's go on to the next article. This one is from Curbed, New York, the New York Curbed. This is kind of an interesting one. Oh, it didn't switch over here. Let's do this. There we go. I want to make sure this gets way bigger so we can see. There we go. So far, the new broker fee rules are good for sellers. This already annoys me, right? The market in general is good for sellers. Real estate in general is good for sellers. Real estate typically is hard for buyers. I know obviously the market changes and things change, but overall, do we really need to give the sellers any more advantage right now? We need to help out the buyers a little bit. So let's see what this is talking about. I'm not going to talk about this first paragraph, just talking about there's big changes and the lawsuit, that talks about a little bit more about, what the jury decided, how it's going to be paid, some of this stuff. So we're going to talk about a little bit more about what this means for people right now. Before touring homes with an agent, buyers now responsible for negotiating commission payments with their own agents. Again, we talked about this, kind of went an overview, all this stuff. So is this good for buyers? Do they have any leverage over the process? Whether buyers will be able to use those choices to their advantage is another matter. Stephen Brobeck, a senior fellow at the Consumer Protection Federation, which published a consumer alert about the commission changes earlier this month, recommends buyers try to negotiate fees of no more than 2% with their real estate agent. this is really, really interesting because two things. Number one, the whole lawsuit was about setting commissions, price fixing. That they felt like, oh, real estate agents, yeah, you say it's negotiable, but you don't really negotiate. Well, that's how negotiating works. Nobody has to negotiate one way or the other. It's an effort, it's an attempt. And now we just had this lawsuit settled that says, okay, realtors, we feel as a jury, you have fixed prices and you've all agreed that you're going to charge an amount, which is illegal. And then this guy comes out with the Consumer Protection Federation and says, I'm telling everybody that they shouldn't pay anyone more than 2%. That should be that should be the most that you're willing to pay. Okay, well, isn't that a form of price fixing? That doesn't seem correct. And that seems like it's going against the spirit. And at the end of the day, it's negotiable. And you typically get what you pay for. Secondly, normally we hear conversations about minimum wage and minimum payment and minimum compensation. We really very rarely, if ever, hear about maximum compensation. I mean, do you hear this guy talk about, hey, next time you go to the doctor's office, you shouldn't pay more than $50 for a physical exam? That's it. If you pay less, great. You should pay any more than that. If you go into that doctor's office and say, hey, I read some article that said the max I should pay you is $50, that doctor is going to look you square in the face. He's going to point at the door and say, there you go. And that's going to be it. And he's not going to see you. So interesting that this protection agency is advocating for a maximum payment. Interesting to me. He adds that they shouldn't dismiss out-of-hand brokers who ask for 3% if their experience and track record really are exceptional. So you mean it's almost like they should get paid based on their experience, what they're worth, what they've done? What a strange concept. And maybe that's 1%, maybe it's 2%, maybe it's 3%, maybe it's 4%. Who's to decide that? Well, the agent and the consumer. So a whole lot of nothing from this guy. He also cautioned that some of the buyer broker agreements he's looked at are opaque and difficult to understand, even for lawyers. Well, that's not agents' fault. That's lawyers' fault that have to try to now protect agents from this lawsuit. Brokers should be able to explain what all the terms are, and if it's still unclear, buyers may want to find a different broker or consult a buyer. Buyers can also forego using a broker altogether and hire a lawyer to draw up the necessary documents. Again, that's nothing new either. You've never had to use an agent. It's never been a requirement. You can always sell it yourself. You can buy it yourself, use a real estate attorney, all sorts of things that you can do. Can't buyers just cut out the buyer's agents altogether? The short answer is yeah, they could. While buying without an agent was always an option, buyers previously had little incentive to do so since they weren't the ones paying for the service. It was also common for sellers' agents, at least in New York, to persuade buyers without representation to let them work both sides of the deal, keeping the entire commission to themselves. I mean, yes, but you have to disclose that. It's not as simple as just saying, hey, you should just work with me. I suppose in some instances that probably did happen, but I don't think that's a commonality. Many experts believe that the new system will encourage more buyers to go it alone, potentially to their detriment, which I do agree. Another wrinkle is that buyers can't use financing to pay commission fees, at least not under current law. For first-time home buyers, this could be yet another hurdle to entering the housing market. 66% of first-time home buyers say they can't afford to pay a broker's fee in addition to the down payment and closing costs, according to a recent survey by the real estate firm Clever. So think about that. If you're a seller and you're one of these sellers, like we saw in the last article, that said, I'm not paying a buyer's agent commission. Buyers, you hired them, they work for you, you pay them. According to this study and this statistic, that means that seller is crossing off 66% of the buyer pool. They have just eliminated 2/3 of the buyer pool for their home. And now they're only working with 1/3 of total buyers. Of that 1/3, how many even want their home? How many buyers in that 1/3 can afford that price point, need that many bedrooms, need to be in that location, all sorts of things that go into that. So instantaneously, sellers are discounting 2/3 of buyers, which is going to lead to probably less offers, probably less demand, probably a lower sale price. So is this change good for sellers? For the most part, yes. Now they're only responsible for paying their own broker not brokers on both sides of this transaction, a change that should save them money. For example, the seller of a $1 million home would now pay $25,000 or $30,000 in commission to their agent instead of the $50,000 or $60,000 they've coughed up before. And if they did offer to pay both sides, it makes their house more appealing to buyers instead of just being a given. Well, that was the same way it was before. It's not going to be any more appealing than it was before because before they were paying both sides anyway. It's only more appealing to homes that don't offer a commission. So that really hasn't changed. Brobeck, the consumer protection expert, says that he also expects real estate commissions will eventually fall from 5 or 6% to between 3 and 4% as a result. I wish he explained why he felt that way, because to me that doesn't make sense. I just think that they're going to go down from 5 or 6 to 3 or 4. Well, why? It's kind of a baseless claim. Sellers, at least theoretically, are the ones who really stand to benefit from the new rules. As Leo Pareja, the CEO of eXp Realty, points out, the terms of these changes were worked out by sellers' attorneys who filed class action lawsuits against the NAR and individual brokerages. And again, in my opinion, really screws buyers. And I wouldn't be surprised if there is a class action lawsuit from buyers and their buyers' lawyers to say, hey, this doesn't make any sense. This is unfair. Buyers feel like they're being pushed into using a certain agent because they can't afford to pay the agent they want, or they feel like they have to go to listing agent because they can't afford their own representation. And by being forced to listing agent, these buyers felt like they were not represented well. I can see a lot of issues with where this could be headed. Weren't broker fees negotiable before? Yes, at least in theory. What does that mean? It's either yes or no. It's not like, oh, is the grass wet or is it dry? Well, it's wet in theory. Well, it either is or it isn't. And the answer is yes, they were negotiable before. However, sellers who brought the lawsuit against NAR argued that in practice, they really weren't, since most listings included information about the buyer's broker could expect to be paid on the deal, making it difficult to offer less than the going rate. What is the going rate? It's negotiable, i.e. a broker might steer their clients away from properties that offered a 2% rate if most other listings were offering 2.5% or 3%, thereby encouraging everyone to pay the same artificially high fee. That's like saying that we're going to outlaw sales at Target, because if t-shirt A is on sale for $10 and t-shirt B is not on sale and it's $15, well, then people are going to buy the one that's on sale for 10. Yes, of course. Yes, of course. So it's a marketing strategy. If you make your home more appealing to buyers, i.e. by offering more commission out, then yes, more buyers are oftentimes going to go that way. Again, as agents, we don't decide what homes buyers like or don't like. We do have a role in showing buyers what properties are on the market, but buyers oftentimes can look at Zillow, Redfin, Trulia, and see exactly what homes are on the market. And again, as an agent, what's going to happen? You're going to say, hey, there's 3 homes that fit your criteria. Here's only 2 of them. That buyer is going to say, well, why didn't you show us this third one? We want to go see this third one. And if you say, no, I'm not going to show it to you, well, you're probably going to lose that client because you're not a good agent. So again, just more issues that I see with this. How will this actually work in practice? It's still early, but brokers say a lot depends on how competitive the market is and who has the leverage. In a slow market, sellers may be more willing to pay the buyer's broker or kick in other fees to offset the cost. In hot markets, however, the cost is more likely to be borne by buyers. Pareja says that as a result of the new rules, he expects to see more flat and reduced fee services like Redfin catering to buyers instead of just sellers. It could also become standard for services to be offered a la carte, i.e. brokers could charge different rates for taking clients to showings, negotiating offers, drawing up contracts, etc. Another reason I think this is bad. So they're saying, oh, well, as an agent, instead of charging a percentage to sell a home, you could say, hey, for $49, I'll show you this house. So $50, I'll show you that house. And as a buyer, you go, okay, well, that's not so bad. It could save me some money. Well, yeah. Okay. Well, what if you need to view 8 homes? And what if you need to view those 8 homes in 2 days? Okay. Well, 8 homes times $50 a home, that's $400. And that's what you have to pay. Even if you don't like any of the homes, even if you don't buy any of the homes, even if you don't look at any of the homes again, you're out $400 to that agent. Well, it kind of seems like a good proposition for the buyer's agent. Or you think, okay, you know what? I'll charge you $999 to write an offer. Okay, submit an offer. You say, okay, great. Show me the house, $50. Write the offer, $1,000. I'm in $1,500. Great. Okay, what if that offer doesn't get accepted? That buyer is out $1,500. Okay, what if that happens 6 times? What if that happens 5 times? What if it happens 10 times and that person's out $15,000 and they may have not even bought a home? And that money's coming right out of their pocket every single time. So the a la carte thing actually might work out better for agents than it really does for consumers. Same thing goes for charging by the hour. You know, there's a whole nother host of issues that go into that. I won't get way into that right now. We're already going on an hour for the live stream, but I can expand on that more if anybody wants me to. So what we really want to know is will home prices drop? No, unequivocally no, says Perea, the brokerage head. While broker commissions are theoretically baked into home prices, in reality, no one I spoke with thought that the new commission structure would necessarily lead to lower home prices, which are largely controlled by supply. A seller will try to get every dollar they can, Perea says. In other words, sellers won't factor in the $25,000 in broker fees they're saving under the new rules and knock it off the price. Of course, why would they? If you have a commodity that's worth $500,000 and you go, oh, well, actually some rules changed and now I don't have to pay $15,000. So even though my property's worth $500,000, I'm willing to sell it for $485,000, even though the market rate is $500,000. Who's going to do that? What person is going to do that? A saint? I don't know. It just is not realistic. They'll ask for as much as they think they can get. One real estate agent in Virginia told the Wall Street Journal that he'd recently sold 3 homes in Fairfax County without offering any upfront buyer's broker commission, all sold quickly. And the thing how it applies to NYC, we're not going to worry about that. So, you know, it's all kind of interesting that the way this is working out. And I think that, you know, obviously I've given my opinion on it. I do think there's some good things for it for consumers. I think there's good things for it for agents. I think there's bad things for consumers, and I think there's bad things for agents. And this is just something that is going to continue to change. There's a lot of new rules that went into play. I think some of these rules could be modified and changed over time. I think there will be more lawsuits to come. And I really think that there's going to be many more changes ahead. It'll be interesting to see where it goes. That's for sure. And it's hard to really say. And it's hard to say if there's going to be any new lawsuits that come from this. So I really, really hope that you guys enjoyed this evening's stream. If you're local to the Claremont, LA area, please stay safe out there. The fires are crazy. Air quality is terrible. So do what you can to help out your neighbor. Say a thank you to the firefighters out there. They're working really, really hard, and all first responders. They're working really, really hard right now. If you guys enjoyed the stream and you're still sticking around, drop a like on the stream. Consider subscribing to the channel. It's free. It doesn't cost anything, and it really helps me out. And if you are looking for a real estate agent, feel free, drop a comment below, send me an email. There's a little link that you can hit in the description, and I'll go back and pin a comment after the live stream is over. You can click on that link. I'll ask you some quick questions about what you're looking for, and I can get you hooked up with a great agent anywhere in the United States. I have a huge network. I work with tons of agents across the United States, and I can help you find the perfect agent for your needs, and it doesn't cost anything. And that is for whether you're buying or selling. So I hope you guys all have a wonderful night. I'll see you next Wednesday on the next stream. Have a great rest of your